Welcome to chapter 2. And this happens to be the first of our 3 chapters on macromolecules. So, just to remind you, the macromolecules, or the 3 sources of energy, are carbohydrates, lipids, and proteins. So, we're talking about carbohydrates here. And so, carbohydrates can be divided into simple sugars and complex carbs. We can take simple sugars and further delineate those into monosaccharides and disaccharides. However, monosaccharides and disaccharides are similar in that they all taste sweet. What I have here is one of the monosaccharides, and I know there's a good chance you might not have had a lot of chemistry, and that's not a problem. I don't like it either. But the point is that it's one molecule. So mono meaning one. So it's a single saccharide molecule, monosaccharide. So you can imagine that a disaccharide would be if I took 2 of these molecules and I put them together. Di meaning 2. So that's it. Monosaccharide, disaccharide. Maybe if I could point out a couple of things to you here that you don't necessarily need to remember, but we have carbohydrates, oxygen, and hydrogen. So actually, if you think about the word carbohydrate, so let's look at this word here, carbohydrate. When I say hydrate, what do you think of? Water, right? So hydrate water. So water is H2O, right? So hydrogens, oxygens. 2 hydrogens, 1 oxygen makes water. So H2O, and then I attached a carbon to it. Carbo meaning carbon. Carbohydrate. It's like a water molecule. So it's CH2O. It's always in that proportion. 1 carbon to 2 hydrogens to 1 oxygen. So if you were to count all of these, we've got 6 carbons, 6 oxygens, 12 hydrogens. 1 to 2 to 1, CHO. CH2O. That's a more accurate way to do it. So let's look at the monosaccharides. There are 3 monosaccharides I want you to know. And I've got them listed here. Glucose, fructose, and galactose. You have heard of glucose, and you will hear of glucose. Blood glucose, for example. Right, so that's a simple, very simple form of a carbohydrate. Fructose, you've probably heard of that, for example, high fructose corn syrup. Right. The only word that you might not have heard of is galactose. But if you look at the word, here's the word lactose. So you've heard of lactose before. Just put a GA in front of it. So you've heard of glucose, you've heard of fructose, you've heard of lactose before. Just put a GA. Something else that you might notice, that all these words end with OSE. So if a word ends with OSE, it's going to be a sugar. It's going to be a carbohydrate. See, so something here, I'm saying sugars sometimes when I really mean a carbohydrate. So sometimes those words are used interchangeably. But if I were to talk about starch and I call it a sugar, technically that's wrong. I mean, not technically, it's wrong. It's not a sugar. But sometimes we do that. We just call the whole group of carbohydrates sugars, which is not correct. So disaccharides. Oh, so let me go back here. Fructose is a form of like fruit sugar. I've got nothing to say about galactose. I've never tasted it, but I can tell you that glucose is kind of like that sugar, like in those pixie sticks you get on Halloween. And it kind of dissolves in your mouth. That's what glucose is like. If you go to an international store, you can actually buy it and try it. It's a little less sweet than fructose. I believe you can buy fructose as well. So let's look at the disaccharides. Maltose, sucrose, lactose. I didn't put it on here, but maltose is made from 2 glucose molecules put together. So that's that simple. Okay, I'm going to do it. I put it down, but I was going to go like this. Here's a molecule of glucose, we put it together to make maltose. A really stupid analogy. I went to put it down next to me. Don't do it, but I just like to show you the stupid things that I think of sometimes. So maltose, the like the Whoppers candy, if you take off the chocolate, that's malt in the middle, right? So malted, I don't know what else, like milkshakes, the malted flavor, that's maltose. Sucrose is just table sugar. It's made from one molecule of glucose, one molecule of fructose. Put them together, you have sucrose. Lactose is made from one molecule of glucose and one molecule of, guess, the lactose. Put them together, you have lactose, milk sugar. We call all of them sugars, right? But three of them are monosaccharides, three of them are disaccharides. Please know the three monosaccharides that I gave you here, the three disaccharides, and know what the disaccharides are made from. Each one of these has glucose in it. Glucose plus another glucose. Glucose plus fructose. Glucose plus lactose. Complex carbohydrates. If we take thousands of glucose molecules and put them together, we end up with a few different types of molecules. One is starch. Starch is how plants store their carbohydrates. So, what is corn? Well, the leaves of the corn make glucose, and then it stores it as starch in the kernel. Same could be said for rice, same could be said for potatoes, same can be said for wheat, same could be said for bananas. It's also a starch, right? We hold starch also, but we don't hold it nearly as long as plants. So for us, it's called glycogen. We store glycogen in our muscles and our liver. I kind of view it, this is not a correct view, but it's kind of an analogy. Our blood sugar, imagine like little granules of sugar floating through our blood. So eventually our blood sugar gets too high, and then insulin is going to lower our blood sugar. But how does it do that? Well, one way is that we make glycogen. So if I take all those little sugar granules in your blood, my cat, you take all these sugar granules in the blood and you put them all together to make a sugar cube and put that sugar cube in your liver or muscle, that would be like glycogen. So glycogen would be like the sugar cube, the little granules of sugar would be like glucose. Like an analogy, not. But I hope you get the idea. Fiber is the cell wall of plants. Plants don't have a skeleton, so how do they stand up? Each one of their cells has a tough cell wall around it called cellulose, which we just know as fiber. So there's different kinds of fiber. You've probably heard of pectins in gums. They are used often as thickening agents. Pectins are used in jams. Gum is gum, like chewing gum. That's a type of fiber, right? It's not digestible. Um, so we don't consider any of these types of fiber as calories because in order to consider something a calorie or energy, you have to digest it. Our body does not digest it. Well, it's indigestible. We have to absorb it. You have to absorb the energy. You have to get the energy into your bloodstream. With fiber, we don't digest it, and therefore we don't absorb it. You eat fiber, it goes through you and out the other end. So we don't absorb the energy from fiber, so we don't count it as calories, which is one of the reasons why, how can I eat so much salad, or lettuce, or so much broccoli, and it doesn't count as like calories. There are some calories in there, but a lot of that is fiber. So yeah, that's one of the few sources of that's one of the few guilt-free foods that you can eat. Do you love sitting there eating raw broccoli? No. But that's the other rule in nutrition. It's one of the main rules in nutrition. If it tastes good, if you enjoy it, it's not good for you. If you don't enjoy it, don't derive any pleasure from it, it's probably something that you should be eating. What kind of fish do you like? Fried catfish? Ah, you enjoy it, huh? What you should be eating is baked mackerel. So you're like, no, which one of those fish tastes so much better? So anyway, so this is not really in your chapter. I just thought I would introduce it to you. Sweeteners. Make sure they haven't cut me off yet. So these are some sweeteners. We get so most of our sugar actually comes from corn in the United States. And there's a whole bunch of political reasons behind that. None of them are necessarily logical reasons. Really, sugar comes from either sugarcane or beets in the north part of the country, especially at the beginning of winter. They produce they're pulling up all those sugar beets from the ground, and they're making also sugar from it. It's almost indistinguishable. You can't tell the difference between sugarcane sugar and beet sugar, right? But we use high fructose corn syrup, and you can tell the difference. Um, so then there's some artificial sweeteners. Saccharin is the pink package. That is the first one. If you are drinking that and you are under 65, I don't know what your problem is. Um, Tastes horrible, but whatever. Aspartame is the blue one, equal. It's actually a protein. It's two well, it's a protein. It's a protein that makes you think it's sweet, right? And by itself, it's a lot sweeter than sugar. So actually, in these packets, a lot of that is filler because it would be way too sweet if you filled that whole thing with aspartame. Way, way, way too sweet. So a lot of that is actually just filler, right? So um, neotame, we don't really use it, so I wouldn't worry about it. And PKU, if you have that as a problem, you would already know it. So um, we'll kind of skip it. Acesulfame potassium, that is one that is used in like drinks. So like Pepsi Zero, Coke Zero, you know what I'm saying? The diet drinks, right? They'll play with three different types of sugars. Or actually they'll play with four different types of sugars. So they'll play with levels of aspartame, acesulfame potassium, sucralose, and sometimes sugar alcohols like the one that I can't think of right now. I don't know why I can't think of it. Stevia. Right, so messing around with different quantities of those might lead you, like what's the difference between Coke Zero and Diet Coke? That's all it is. But these things are a lot sweeter than regular sugar. Look at Splenda, the yellow one. It's regular table sugar, and somehow they figured out how to get chlorine attached to it. And your body sometimes your body, when it sees weird things like that it's not expecting, it just like sends it on its way. So we don't actually absorb it, but it's irrelevant anyway because it's so much sweeter than sugar. So how much of it do you need? Just some granules, just a tiny pinch, right? There's no calories, not really. And then sugar alcohols taste horrible. Again, it's not. I bought some soda once that has stevia in it, and I just wanted to taste it. And usually, like I have two boys, and if I put something in the refrigerator, like you better eat it or drink it right there when you get home. Otherwise, it's gone, right? That stuff. There was one open can and five closed cans. They stayed in the refrigerator. That was it. Right? Nobody wanted to touch it. But we do use it in sugarless gum. It is very useful because it doesn't cause cavities. So if you have small kids and they're pushing you to buy them something, get them sugar-free gum. Maybe there's some like sugar-free gum in one of those plastic things, and I don't know. It seems like candy, But if you got to give them something, give them that. You got small kids, fight the good fight. Don't get them any of that shit from the beginning. Just don't. I'm not. I mean, if you can, you're not going to be able to. But try. So, sugar alcohol. Hey, when they're really small, save all your McDonald's wrappers and just wrap stuff up in McDonald's and put it in the bag. And it's like, hey kids, brought you home some McDonald's broccoli. So I don't know. It works for a very short time. All right, so there we go. The last thing is the RDA, recommended dietary allowance. Some people say it's recommended daily allowance. That's fine, not a big deal. But this is a very common um, dietary DRI, dietary reference intake that we use. RDA, AI, adequate intake. So that's what RDA is. How much should you have in a day, roughly? So about 50-60% of our calories should come from carbohydrates, not from sugar. So we're going to break that down. It's about 130 grams a day. So let's break it down. Out of that 130 grams, about 30 should be in fiber, more or less, depending on your gender. Too much fiber, not good, because fiber swells, it absorbs water. So too much of it absorbs water and it'll actually cause constipation. And so watch for people because they will get constipated and then they'll shove down Metamucil. Then they get constipated. And how do they answer it? More Metamucil, right? So you got to watch people sometimes. They start going crazy and they create their own problems. So there you go. That's carbohydrates. How much sugar? Virtually none. Very little. Look on your food label and you will see. Download the app like MyFitnessPal and you'll see that you're eating way more sugar than you should. Then there's all this research about is high fructose corn syrup giving us whatever it's giving us? A good chance. Like, there's a bunch of inconclusive research out there. And I'll tell you some other research concerning sweeteners. The research shows that people that drink diet drinks, for example, there's no difference between them and the rest of the population as far as like how much weight they put on or keep on. So we don't know if that's just because of behavior or now they think that your body treats like Equal or Splenda, it treats it like it's a regular sugar, right? So your tongue is recognizing that it's sweet, and so your body is therefore treating it like that. And we're not going to get into it, but there's this association between sugar intake and how much fat you end up storing in your body. So anyway, I just thought I would throw that in there. So that is an introduction. That's not everything on carbohydrates. Do read the chapter, but that is my introduction. So always reach out with any questions.